Vision Quest is deeply political, and it's constantly in movement. It's one thing that I've noticed after many years of guiding people through Vision Quest. We can stick to the main stages of the Vision Quest, but as you said, you have people coming from all different walks of life. So what do we do to help them? We get them to write an autobiography first, so that we can get a sense of who they are. And it's only when we get that sense do I feel confident enough to take somebody through a Vision Quest, because I know that they can deal with it. And we get them to write an autobiography and a letter of intent. Intent changes. You have an intent that brings you there, that makes you turn up. And it can be, I've just been sacked from my job. I need to find new direction in my life. A rite of passage would be good for that. So you turn up to do a rite of passage to see what career move you want to make. But the Vision Quest is a pretty smart process. It knows you've turned up for very different reasons. And it kind of addresses those issues, which you don't even know you've got until you've realised it, until somebody points it out to you, and nature points it out to you. Then you begin to see the power of it. It's magic. It's a form of magic.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with me, Dan Burgess. The story of Spaceship Earth is simple. We live on a life-giving rock called Earth, hurtling through space. Like a spaceship, we have a finite amount of supplies with an intelligent operating system called nature, which keeps everything replenished as long as we all respect it and participate wisely. In this podcast, I'm in conversation with folk involved in regenerating life, shifting consciousness and reimagining how we can live more beautifully and peacefully. I talk with artists, writers, activists, designers, adventurers, healers, farmers, creative mavericks, and more. Their stories invite us to participate in the co-creation of life-sustaining cultures, in service to life, becoming crew on Spaceship Earth.
Greetings, Earthling. Dan here. Welcome to the Spaceship Earth podcast. I hope this episode finds you okay as can be in the maddest of times that we're in. If this is your first time to the Spaceship Earth podcast, thank you for checking us out. We greatly appreciate your presence here. We hope you enjoy the ride. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your support. We'd love to hear from you on how you are finding these first few episodes of the year. Send us a message, get in the comments on Substack, drop us an email if that's more your style, hello@thespaceship.earth. We'd love to hear what these conversations are bringing up for you. For those of you that have flipped to paid subscription on the Substack, thank you so much. We really appreciate you supporting the Spaceship Earth podcast mission this year. We need our listeners' help on this one to help keep the engine room running and enable us to move into this mode of recording every week, publishing 2 episodes a month is the plan, which is underway. Lots of fantastic guests coming down the line. So thank you for that. And if you can't offer up any financial contribution, maybe you could give us a review. You could share an episode with a friend that you think might like it. You could post it on your socials. You could start a conversation on the Substack thread. That's why we've moved to Substack, to try and build a bit more community around it. If you haven't joined the Substack, go to becomingcrew.substack.com. Subscribe and you'll get every episode into your email inbox, and you can comment straight from your desktop, laptop, phone. So in this episode, I'm in conversation with David Wendl-Berry, who is a Vision Quest guide who trained at the School of Lost Borders in California over 30 years ago. under the guidance of Stephen Foster and Meredith Little, who are the pioneers who first brought the Vision Quest from Native American First Nation cultures into Western culture. David is the preeminent Vision Quest guide in the UK, and he's been leading people through the Vision Quest journey for over 3 decades here. So what is a Vision Quest? Why have I got David on the podcast? And why am I interested in speaking to the Vision Quest in these times? Well, the Vision Quest is it's a 10-day process in total. It includes some preparation work. It then involves going out onto a wild landscape on your own for 4 days and 4 nights, fasting with no food, no technology, no camping gear, totally on your own. And then it involves a return, coming back, a sharing of stories, and then an integration process, which in the work that David guides takes a year. So last July, I went on a Vision Quest, which was guided by David and his partner guide, Jen Gold. It's something I've been wanting to do for many years. I had done sort of a variety of kind of wilderness solos in the years before this, but 24 hours max, never this amount of time, and never with a guided process like this. So I wanted to capture some of David's story, because his story into becoming a Vision Quest guide in itself is fascinating. The fact that he has guided hundreds and hundreds of people from all walks of life through this rites of passage, because that's what it is. A Vision Quest is a rites of passage. He has learnt vast amounts about why this deep work has such profound impacts on people, and why it feels like work that really is desperately needed in the times that we're in. So I wanted to capture that story. I wanted to hear David's insights into this work. And also, if you've been listening to this podcast for some time, you'll know that we speak a lot to the story of separation, this kind of severance that we've had in our highly westernized cultures from this living earth that we're part of, this severance from place, from landscape, from the mystery, the intelligence and the sacredness of our living earth. And how has that impacted, or how that continues to impact us in these times of overwhelm? And so these Vision Quests, these rites of passage, these things that many cultures on this earth still practice, and actually our ancestors not that long ago would have practiced, are so missing from our modern cultures. And it feels to me that so many of the profound issues that we are facing in our modern cultures, I would say there's a crisis of soul, a crisis of connection and meaning. So much of that I believe is coming from this disconnection from the earth. And rites of passage work like the Vision Quest, I believe, offers ways back in to that sacredness, to that connection. And as the title of this podcast suggests, what does the earth want from you? There is a bit of a flip about why we're here, what are we being called to do in these times? And maybe there's it's less about what do we want from the world, but maybe what the world wants from us. And I think that's very much something that has opened up for me since going on my own Vision Quest. And that process of the Vision Quest, as David will speak to in the conversation, you come back from your 10 days, but the Vision Quest continues to cook for at least a year. So I'm sort of 9 months in. For me, I went out on the quest last year. I had some very big questions that I was wrestling with, some big shifts going on in my life, and that's what I took out onto the land. And you go out and you have a bunch of practices and tools and rituals that you have in your bag, if you like, that you might want to explore. But it's a very emergent, very wild, very alive experience, as David will speak to. Anyway, I really believe that rites of passage, or lack of rites of passage in our Western cultures, are a huge contributor to the kind of suffering, the soul crisis that's going on. And with the amount of shit coming down the line that we know is coming down the line, from climate ecological breakdown, the unraveling of our kind of social systems, connecting us back into landscapes, back into this living world through rites of passage. And as we'll discover in the conversation with David, this is how we become adults. It's kind of like a rites of passage where we let go of the child and begin to step into service, to serve our communities, and to connect with our gifts, which are there not for our own individual gain, but actually help us find our place in this wide web of life, this place of service. So many reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, and expect more this year on rites of passage work and connecting us back into the land. If you're interested in a Vision Quest, do reach out to David and Jen. I'll leave their connections in the show notes. And if this piques your interest in threshold work, rites of passage, wilderness solo, spending time out on a landscape overnight on your own, then do reach out. We are planning our first on-land offerings from Becoming Crew in September, and the first offer will be a wilderness solo over a weekend down in the southwest of England. So if you are curious to know more and maybe put yourself down for more details, then just reach out, hello@becomingcrew.com, and we'll be in touch. So let's cut to it. This is the Spaceship Earth podcast in conversation with David Wendl-Berry. Enjoy.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with my dad, Dan Burgess.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Can you just... I've been asking this question at the start of this year with guests, is how would you describe right now the vibes on Spaceship Earth as you're experiencing it?
Oh, terrible. It's the worst it's ever been. But not unexpected. And basically, myself and a handful of other apprentices, we knew all about this in 1985. Sun Bear sat us down and talked us all the way through the prophecies of his people, which they called the Earth Changers.
Give us the listeners a context on Sun Bear.
Sun Bear was a medicine man that I met. Basically, that's what put me on this path. I went from being a film editor to meeting Sun Bear, and everything changed. I met him, and I needed to do a Vision Quest from that meeting.
You met him out in the US?
I met him in London.
Oh, right.
I met him in Kentish Town, which is a bit unexpected. Yeah, it's a strange place to meet a Native American medicine man, but yeah, he talked about all kinds of stuff, sweat lodges and pipe ceremonies, and then he started talking about Vision Quests, and it kind of shook me up, basically. So I ended up going to America and doing one with him, and then I became an apprentice. And every year he would come over to this country for an extended period, and we'd organise workshops for him to run, so that would generate the money to pay for his fees. And then we'd schedule, a couple of weeks where he's just with us, so that we get all our teachings as well. And this one time he sat us down and said he's going to tell us about the Earth Changers. And he talked about America's involvement with Islam and all the troubles that brought about. He talked about all the Earth Changers, flooding, political unrest, weather changes. It's the whole lot. he went on for about a good couple of hours telling all of this, and at the end I looked at him and I said, "Son Bear, that's the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard. None of that is ever going to happen." And he looked at me and smiled and said, "There'll come a point when it seems that everybody around you is going totally crazy. That's where we are now." And I see it everywhere. It's a very scary time we're going through. We just have to keep focused, really, and keep connected to the land, to keep ourselves grounded.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the reason I wanted to come and have this conversation with you is, well, there was many reasons, but obviously, I met you properly last summer when I came and you guided me on a 4-day, 4-night vision quest, and I'd come across your work in books. I think it was through Martin Shaw, actually, his writing, that I'd sort of become aware of the work you've been doing here in the UK for, well, it's like 3 decades, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
And so I guess and I guess having gone through that quest with you, which I can speak about a bit down the line, but what I experienced was many things, but I came away with a huge amount of insight and like medicine, I would say, which for these times that we're speaking to, which are sort of so overwhelming, has felt like probably the most valuable thing, one of the most valuable things I received last year, which I'm still working with. And so there's something I just felt that the work that you've been sort of quietly doing for a long time, in some ways to me feels like it's possibly more important than ever in this moment that we find ourselves in. And of course, it's not massively accessible, this work, and yet I guess, at least my understanding, the sort of irony of that, of course, is in other cultures this was just standard practice, right? Yeah. Rites of passage. Yeah. So could you, just to kick us off, could you speak a little, and you can weave in your sort of story of how this all happened as well, but could you just give our listeners just a sense of like, what is a vision quest? And because you said I've heard about this and I had to go out with Son Bear, and maybe you could talk us through that experience of your first quest, and maybe that can help people understand what's the purpose of a vision quest.
Okay. Well, I'd never heard of Vision Quest. Now, I was born in 1950, so all the way through the 60s, I was a teenager. Of course, life for me then was all sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And of course, when I was 19, I had my first mescaline experience, which pushed me straight into the spiritual life. And yeah, I started searching, and I couldn't ever find what I was looking for. About 3-4 months after that experience with mescaline, I joined a Gurdjieff group and spent 5 years studying the teachings of Gurdjieff, which was amazing stuff. And then I left that. Well, they closed the group down. I moved on. I was working as a film editor, earning lots of money, and as you do, shoveling most of it up my nose. So I had a great job, good money, really, really bad habits that you pick up doing that. But I loved it all. So life was great. Good money, lots of drugs, lots of sex, lots of music. And then something happened. And sometimes huge changes in your life are kind of initiated by such a tiny little bit of movement. And that movement was a phone call. I got a phone call from a friend of mine, and he said, "David, we've got a Native American medicine man giving a talk at our Buddhist centre. Do you want to come?" And I said, no, I'm not really interested in that. And he said, "Well, you're only going to stay at home and get stoned, so you might as well come anyway." So I went, and I met Son Bear, and we're sitting in this big hall, and he was talking about smudging or prophecies of his people or whatever, and it was mildly interesting. I just wanted to go outside and roll a joint in the park. So it hadn't grabbed me. I'm just sitting there wondering what to do, and then all of a sudden he changed the subject. He started talking about vision quests, and something really weird happened. As soon as he mentioned the word Vision Quest, my stomach went into a knot and I started to retch. And the more he talked about it, the more I felt as if I was going to throw up any minute. And I couldn't work out why. It was freaking me out a bit. And then at the end of the talk, everybody got up and left, and I was still sitting there. And he came up to me and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No." And I told him what was happening to me. And he laughed and said, "Oh, you got to do one, kid." I said, "Do what?" And he said, "A vision quest." I said, "No fucking way are you going to get me out in the woods starving. No, I'm not doing that. That's madness." So I left. He left. And a year goes by, and I can't get this thing, Vision Quest, out of my head. It's like this bug had been planted in my brain. And it was weird. It was like I'd never heard of it before, yet I knew it. There was something deeply familiar about it that absolutely intrigued me and terrified me at the same time. And in the end, it felt as if it was driving me a bit crazy. So towards the end of the year, I got in touch with the Bear Tribe in America, and I booked up to do a Vision Quest. And I took a month off of work, and I flew out to Washington State, met Sun Bear, did my first Vision Quest with him, which was extraordinary. Thought I was going to die, which is the whole point, really.
Yeah, exactly. Give people a sense of like what that entailed, like, because even just the duration and
Well, yeah, it was, I got there and was told that the Vision Quest was happening on a certain date, and we had a few weeks off before the Vision Quest was to start. And I remember Sun Bear walking me up the mountain to do the Vision Quest. And we got to this place up on the mountain, and he said, "This is your place. You stay here. There's your water. See you in 4 days." And off he goes. And I sat there and watched him walk away and into the woodland. And I sat there and thought, "Oh fuck, what am I doing? This is insane. I'm going to die out here. There's no food. Nobody had to help me. This is mad. Everything around me can eat me. They've got bears, they've got rattlesnakes, they've got scorpions. This is awful. I've made a big mistake. How can I go home now?" And in the first 30 seconds after he disappeared, I went into total panic. But that kind of subsided because it was such a beautiful day, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning by the time we were out there. And I looked down and I noticed that on the ground all the way around me are pine cones. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just play around with the pine cones. So I started making pine cone castles and spirals and circles. Just messing around in the sun. And then I got a bit bored with that, and I started using all the pine cones, and I made a huge circle. By the time I finished it, I sat on this rock and I looked at this circle of pine cones. And then I noticed that in the middle of the circle was a branch, and on top of the branch was this weird-looking creature, and I couldn't believe that I hadn't seen it before. I must have spent a couple of hours messing around with those pine cones, and I never saw this before. And all of a sudden, there's this branch with this weird creature on it, and I went up to it and had a look, and it was a praying mantis. And I'd never seen one before, apart from on TV or in books, but this thing was just, and the weird thing was that it was half in and half out of its skin. It was shedding its skin. So I sat and watched it for hours, and it didn't move at all. But the sun had moved. So eventually I got up and I picked up the branch and moved it around and put it back in the sunlight again and sat down. And it was about an hour later of just sitting there, just looking and allowing myself to see that the mirrors started to open up, and I realised that I was there shedding my skin. I was there putting myself in the light. Everything that was happening to me was a reflection of what was going on around me, and it was just transformative. It just changed everything. But then the fast starts to kick in around the second day. And slowly, over the 4 days and nights, you go through different stages. It's as if the isolation, the exposure and the fasting very subtly move you into a very altered state. You become very high, but you don't realise it because there's nobody there for you to get a reference point from it. So you think you're normal. So after all these mirrors are opening up, I'm shedding my skin, I'm putting myself in the light, all this stuff is happening. It kind of comes and goes. And I thought, oh yeah, it's interesting, but what else? And as the days progressed, you slip into a very altered state. And stuff happens that, this one day, I think it was on the third day, I was sitting there just looking out across the landscape, and the landscape was just staggering. It was the Cascade Mountains in Washington State. And I'm just sitting there, and then all of a sudden I hear zzz, and this huge dragonfly landed on my knee. And I looked at it and I said, oh, hello. And it looked up at me and it said, hello. I said, how are you? And he said, I'm okay, thanks, how are you? And I said, well, I'm a bit tired. And he said, yeah, I know, I've been watching you for 3 days. And I had this conversation with a dragonfly that at the time felt totally normal. Didn't feel unusual, didn't feel strange, just felt totally normal. So, I had a conversation with a dragonfly. It flies off. That was a nice little encounter. I didn't really pay much attention to it. It was just something that happened. And on the 4th day, I was absolutely exhausted now and deep into the other reality. And I'm just sitting there so exhausted. I'm looking out across this fantastic mountain landscape. And I see this little black dot, very slowly crossing the sky. I looked at it for a while and I thought, what is that? Is that a bird? Is that a plane? What can that be? I couldn't work it out, and I just watched it. And then it popped into my head. I know what it is. It's a golden eagle. You start fantasizing and start creating stories around stuff. So, oh yeah, it's a golden eagle. So I'm going to call it. So I called Golden Eagle, come and visit me. As soon as I said that, it stopped. It was going like that across the sky, and it just stopped. I thought, hang on a minute. That can't be a bird. It can't be an eagle. Eagles don't hover. I mean, the thing is just it's just in the air. Maybe it's a UFO. I don't know. But then, after about 10 minutes of looking at it and it's just standing there, I realised it was actually moving. But it was moving towards me. So it was going along, and then I asked it to come and visit me, and it stopped, turned around and came straight towards me. And I watched it for about 20 minutes, and not once did it bat its wings. It flew all directly towards me and went 8 feet above my head. And as it went over my head, I just burst out in floods of tears. It was a huge bald eagle, big white head, black body, and as it flew over me, it just looked down. And as soon as it looked down, it just burst out. All these tears just came out, and I don't know whether it was fear, excitement, joy, elation, everything just kind of rushed in, like all that 4 days was all condensed into that one flight of the eagle that went over my head. And as soon as it disappeared, I packed up to come down, and I couldn't believe I saw it. I couldn't believe it happened. I thought it was a hallucination. I'm hallucinating because I've been fasting for all this time. So I came off the mountain. I saw this young woman going off to the showers, and I stopped. I said, excuse me, you didn't happen to see an eagle fly over yesterday? And she said, oh, you mean that big bald eagle? It was really close. That's when my breath got stuck in my throat, and I thought, oh my God, that was real. I called it, and it came.
Yeah, amazing.
This is insane. These things don't happen to me, But it did, and I came off that vision quest, and I flew. 4 days after that vision quest, I walked back into my cutting room at London Weekend Television, and as soon as I walked into my cutting room, my assistant opened up this film can, and there are 2 big white lines in it, and he said, oh Dave, welcome back, here. And I looked at it, and, oh great, so I picked up the straw, and I bent down to snort the coke. And just as I got down, I stopped. I put the straw down and I said, I don't do this anymore. And he looked at me and he said, what? And I looked at him and I said, what? And it was only in that moment that I realised I was not that person anymore. So if I wasn't that person, who the hell was I? And I realised that, the vision quest is a rite of passage. And it moves you from one stage of your life to the next. This is the next. And I don't know what it is yet. But I knew it's just not that anymore. And I realised then that my days as a film editor had come to an end. Well, to cut a long story short, saved up money, quit my job, went to America, spent all that time with all the medicine men and studied. So yeah, it was the beginning of a whole new ball game.
We live on a life-giving rock called Earth, hurtling through space. How bonkers is that? You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast.
If you'd like to support the running of the Spaceship Earth podcast, head over to our Substack and sign up. You'll get every episode straight to your inbox, weekly writing, plus other crew offerings. We're grateful for whatever you can give. Join us at becomingcrew.substack.com. Wow. Yes, indeed. And so, when was the moment you decided I need to bring this to the lands where I live, to UK? What was it?
3 years.
Right, and tell us how that manifested and how did you begin this work here?
Right. Well, I'd done my vision quest with Sunbear. Sunbear was very keen on me making a series of documentaries. And I was keen on doing that too. I thought, well, it's a good opportunity for me to use my film skills to actually make a series of documentaries. And then I started talking to Sunbear.
Looking at this work, or exploring quests.
His world.
Right.
He's a Native American medicine man. When I did my first vision quest with him, I realised that when you become an apprentice to one medicine man, you end up working with a dozen. Because they're all his friends and neighbours, So yeah, that was the beginning of a journey of me researching a series of documentaries. And Sunbear had given me a list of all the different medicine men that had agreed to participate in this film project, which ended up being 28 different episodes filmed all over the world. So of course I was in America doing research on this project. And Sunbear had given me this list of all these medicine men and women that we should meet and talk to and research. Next people on the list were Stephen and Meredith. And I went to see them. And Stephen said, if you want to film our work, maybe you should do a vision quest with us. And I thought, I can do that. I've done one vision quest with Sunbear. I can do another one. So I did my first vision quest with Stephen and Meredith. They took us out to the desert. After that, everything changed. Stephen said, we've got a group going out in 3 days. So we joined that group and did that whole thing. And after that vision quest, I remember Stephen took us to a medicine man who lived local to them, who we called Grandpa. And I spent a lot of time with Grandpa. So we did a sweat lodge with him before we went out and did the vision quest. We did another sweat lodge with him when we came back. And at the end of that sweat lodge, everybody got up to leave. And then Grandpa stopped me and said, you stay behind. And he passed me a cigarette. So there's only myself, Grandpa, in the sweat lodge. And Mike, who was his translator. His job is to translate what the spirits are saying in the sweat lodge, which is very different from the way I've done sweat lodges with other people. Yeah, Grandpa did his own way of running sweat lodges. So yeah, we did this sweat lodge, and Grandpa gives me the cigarette. I light it.
Just explain the sweat lodge, David, for folks.
Sweat lodge is like a little structure made out of willow branches, covered in blankets. So it's black inside, And in the centre, on the inside, there's a hole in the earth, and they heat up rocks in a fire outside, and they bring in hot rocks and put them in the centre. Everybody comes in, sits all the way around the inside of the sweat lodge. The medicine man then pours water over the hot rocks, and it creates steam. And yeah, everybody sweats. It's called sweat lodge. That's, the heat opens you up.
And you're properly sort of really together, aren't you? Or you're really sort of properly as a community of bodies.
Oh yeah. In some of those sweat lodges, we were really crammed, packed with people, and they were in endurance. I mean, it's not easy doing a sweat lodge. And
this will be hours, right?
Oh yeah, God. You can be in a sweat lodge for a couple of hours. You can be in a sweat lodge all night. It depends who's running it and what the energies are dictating. So yeah, I've done many sweat lodges, and they're all different. But Raymond, Grandpa, his sweat lodges were pretty profound. And at the end, after everybody had left, he passed me another cigarette, and I lit that. And 5 minutes later, I'm standing there holding like 5 cigarettes that are all burning at the same time, and I go trying to keep them all going. And I think, this is insane. Why am I smoking 10? And he's still lighting more cigarettes. And eventually, I look at Michael, and he says, the cigarettes are for the spirits to smoke. So you light them and you put them all the way around the stones with the burning tips of the cigarettes pointing towards the stones, which I did. He said, yeah, they're all the spirits here now can smoke. And they're all smoking. And then Grandpa looks at me and says, you just did a vision quest? I said, yeah. He said, there's a little bird here that wants to work with you. Did a little bird come to you on your vision quest? I said, no. He said, well, you've got a connection with a little bird. And I said, what kind of bird? He said, it's hummingbird. And I said, oh my God. I had this beautiful Native American ring that I had, which was silver and turquoise, and it was a hummingbird inlaid in the silver. And I showed it to Grandpa. He said, yeah, that's it. That's the little bird. He said, now I'm going to have to teach you how to work with it. Every night before you go to sleep, you get a saucer and you put some water in it and mix some honey with it, because I really like sweet things. And you put that out and you pray to the little bird every night. And you keep doing that and asking the little bird to feed you as you're feeding it. So I did all that. And I started to get this reoccurring dream that came to me every night. And it was of me sitting in a dark place with a peyote rattle. That's all I had. And that was all I could see. And I didn't know what the dream meant. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't work it out. And it was the same thing every night. Me sitting in a dark place, in the dark, with nothing but this one peyote rattle. And I didn't know what to do with this. And it went on for ages. We'd left Stephen and Meredith by then, and we were going towards Albuquerque, New Mexico, to spend time with Bearheart, who's another medicine man we were working with. And I went through all the shops in Gallup, New Mexico, looking for a peyote rattle. And then we met Bearheart, and I met another medicine man called Tommy Nez, who was a Navajo. And I told him, he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking for a peyote rattle. I have to do this thing where I was sitting in the dark with a peyote rattle. And he said, oh, no, you can't do that. He said, you don't know who made the rattle. You don't know what energy is in it. That could be very dangerous. I'm going to have to give you one of mine. So he gave me this really beautiful peyote rattle, which Jen has now got, actually. She works with it a lot. So I had the rattle. Then we left Albuquerque, New Mexico again. We went back to Stephen and Meredith's in Eastern California. And I'm sitting there and I told Stephen what had happened. And Stephen said, oh, that's really interesting, because I've been living here for 20 years. And it's only yesterday I was walking up on Crater Hill and I found this little cave. I think that must be for you. And I thought, oh, fuck, here we go again. I don't know if I could cope with this again. So the following morning, I go with Stephen up on Crater Mountain, which is a disused volcano. And it's lava stones, and it's really hard to walk. They're very sharp lava rocks, actually. Really hard to walk across it. Eventually, we found this cave, and it was about 3 feet above the earth. And I had to get down on my belly to get into it, and there was enough room inside for me to sit up. The roof of the cave was about 3 inches above my head. I was sitting up, and I had enough room to lie down. And they put me in there in the evening, and they sealed me in. So it was the first night, all the next day, all the second night. It's 36 hours, no food, no water, no light, which was pretty intense, to say the least. So now,
but you obviously had massive trust that you were being sort of guided or overseen. I guess the trust you must have had to sort of just go through with that. I'm intrigued to how you were perceived as well by these medicine men at that time. But there's what I've witnessed today in this culture. You know, we have, you know, the dominant culture is so mistrust. You know, doesn't have, you know, it just looks at this kind of other world, and you know, there's no real trust that there is intelligence. And do you know what I mean? And so, what was driving you at that time to just trust this process?
Well, when I first met Stephen and Meredith, I just totally fell in love with them. I knew I could trust them implicitly. And that was the intriguing thing about Sun Bear. He would send us off to work with different medicine men, different women, but he would never tell you what they're like. You know, and some of them were unbelievably beautiful and wonderful and great, and some of them were just crazy. But you have to approach them in very specific ways. So we did our first vision quest with Stephen and Meredith, absolutely fell in love with them and the way they work, which is very different from the way Sun Bear puts people out on vision quest. See, Stephen and Meredith's work is, what they've done is they've taken the vision quest out of that traditional culture of Native Americans and transplanted it into normal American culture, which means they have to make it applicable to white people so that white people can relate to it and understand it. So they created this whole way of working, which is a treat. It works beautifully for people coming to do vision quests. When I did my first vision quest with Sun Bear, they don't prepare you. They just take you out there. They don't give you any counselling. They don't prepare you at all. They know that the spirits are going to look after you, so they don't have to. So basically, they just walk you up and, okay, you stay here, see you in 4 days, 5 days, goodbye, and they leave you. Whereas with Stephen and Meredith, we use a process. It almost becomes deep psychotherapy, but also leaving space for the land to be the therapist and not us, which means that we mustn't interfere. So yeah, I mean, we did that one vision quest with Stephen and Meredith, then we went back and, well, after I did that Earth Lodge, I was in that Earth Lodge for 36 hours, and of course you lose all time inside the Earth Lodge. It's dark, and you have no idea how long you've been in there. You know, it's really strange. So sometime during those 36 hours, I'm sitting there in the dark, I suddenly see this man who's to my right. And it's really odd. I can see him. It's a little guy with white hair, white beard. He wears a tweed jacket, and he's Welsh. I turn around to look at him, and he's gone. You know, I can only see him in peripheral vision. If I look, he's not there. If I look for, I'm not looking there, I can see this little fella, and I can see him in quite some detail. So I say, hello, who are you? And he says, oh, you called in your ancestors, and I've come to see how you're doing. And it looks as if you're running with your pants down. I thought, hang on a minute, this is all bullshit. I'm making all this shit up. I'm just talking to myself. You know, none of this is real. So I looked at him, and he's gone, and I thought, I'm just making it all up again. So I doubted the whole experience. And then he came again. He was still there. And then he says, you're a city bugger. You come all the way out here to work with these people when you should be doing this work with your people on your land. And oh God, here we go again. Now I'm really beginning to dread this because I know I have to come out of this Earth Lodge and see Stephen. He's going to ask me what happened. So I come out and I see Stephen, I tell him, and he looks at me and he says, right, we're going to train you to be Vision Quest guides. I said, Stephen, I don't have the money for that. You know, we have barely enough money to live on. He said, no, it's nothing to do with money. It's to do with what Spirit wants you to do. So we're going to train you to be Vision Quest guides. And they did. They trained us for about 3 months. We kept going back there and having more training, which was easy then because it was just the two of them and myself and my wife. Now it's School of Lost Borders is huge. So that's how that whole thing started with the School of Lost Borders.
So the land and the spirits claimed you for this work.
Yeah, I never chose this. I wouldn't have done. I loved being a filmmaker. And I really did. But when I started doing this work, it's really hard to explain basically because it kind of grows inside you. And what starts off as a seed inside you turns out to be something awesome and breathtaking and magnificent. And you never know what it's going to be. The Vision Quest is a very magical process. It can be seen on many different levels. Like for many years, is an example. I started running Vision Quest in 1990, which was an interesting year for me because my daughter Amber was born in that year. And it was the year around my first Vision Quest, which I really didn't want to do. I was living in London with Renata, and round the corner from me was a friend of ours called Leah Rutherford, who runs Eagle's Wing, Centre for Shamanic Studies, I think. So anyway, I remember a friend of mine, John, came to visit me, and we went round to see Leo, and we're sitting chatting to Leo, and Leo looks at me, he says, oh, so David, you're a trained Vision Quest guide. I said, yeah. He said, so you did all the training for it? I said, yeah. He said, so are you doing it? I said, no. And he said, well, you're the only person in the country that's trained to do this, and you're not doing it? Isn't that incredibly selfish of you? I thought, oh, for fuck's sake, Leo, don't give me a hard time about it. I said, anyway, I don't have anywhere to use. He said, yes, you can. Yes, you have. You can use my land in Wales. I thought, okay, I haven't got anybody to put out. And John said, yes, you have me. And I thought, you bastards. Bastards have set me up. So I put John out on Vision Quest, first guy. And it just took off. After that, I had groups of people, in that all the way through the 90s, had groups of 6 people. We had so many people wanting to do it. It was crazy. And of course, first 2 years goes really well. Then Sunbear died and threw me into a huge crisis.
Why?
Well, because he was my teacher.
Yeah.
And ever since 1984, when I first met him, up until 1990, it's like he was always there. So whenever I had a problem, I could pick up the phone, speak to Sunbear. Or he'd come over and we'd work it out that way. But, he'd gone. And it threw me into complete panic. And my big question was, who do I apprentice to now? There are all these different... I can't apprentice with Wallace. He's in America. I can't... There's nobody for me to... The only thing I can do is go out and do a Vision Quest. So I arranged to do that. And I went up the mountains to do a Vision Quest with the question, who do I apprentice to now? I got the answer in 30 seconds. But I still did the Vision Quest, just to make sure. And also because I didn't want the answer I got. My question was, who do I apprentice to now? And the answer was really simple. You now apprentice to the land itself. Which means what? I don't... What does that mean? How do I apprentice to the land itself? It made no sense to me. I wanted somebody I could argue with. Somebody who's going to tell me what to do. And I didn't have that. All I had was this vague thing as I'm now apprenticing to the land. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that happens. I actually thought it was a load of bollocks. I thought, the spirits are having a joke on me. Let's pick this silly bugger to be a Vision Quest guide. That'll fuck up his life. I mean, that kind of thoughts was going through. But I did the Vision Quest, and I came out, and I just thought, okay, so I don't really understand what that means to be apprenticing to the land itself. So I'll just kind of leave that to one side and just continue the way I'm doing everything else, which we did. And the years go by, and, you know, I'd do a Vision Quest, I'd come out with a Vision Quest, I'd make some changes to the way we run it.
Were you though? Because the approach that I took part in last year, you know, was a 10-day experience. It was, and obviously it started several weeks before that, and in preparation, you call it the severance, right?
Yes.
Yeah. About 2 or 3 days together on the land in kind of base camp. Then the 4 days, 4 nights out on the land on your own, fasting, and then the return. And I think we spent 2 days around a fire, sharing, and starting the very early stages of integration, I guess.
Yeah.
That kind of container, was that always the container that you worked with when you were apprenticing? Or
Yes. Yeah. Always. And the Vision Quest I did with Sun Bear was exactly the same. 4 days and nights out. You have a couple of days of preparation, and their preparation for us was just reading us passages out of Stephen's book. You know, preparation wasn't given a lot of juice with Sun Bear, but the process is still the same. You have 3 days of preparation called severance, 4 days and nights out in the forest or on the mountain called threshold, and then 3 days and nights listening to people's stories, mirroring it back, called reintegration. But that reintegration period lasts a year. You're still integrating your Vision Quest now. Of course, you want to share it. But there again, you can only share it with people that understand it. You can't share it with your friends and neighbours because they will look at you as if you're crazy. So then when we're running Vision Quest, we tell people, don't tell people anything about your story. Let it cook for a year, because it's not in your body. It's in your aura. It's in your energy field. You have to embody it. You know, all those experiences, all the teachings that go with it, that's just information. It's not going to change anybody unless you live it. You know, it's got to be embodied. Then after you spent a year integrating it all and you've embodied it all, you then see the bigger picture of the Vision Quest. Up until that point, you're seeing bits of a Vision Quest that are not really connected because you haven't connected them in yourself yet. They're still floating around in your energy field. By reviewing your Vision Quest every 3 months, you're taking yourself back to that magical space where you can begin to look at what was actually going on. Simply by rewriting your story, just copying it from one journal to another, gives you a chance to review that story. And little incidents will open up. And you'll go, that's what that bit means, because it's fallen into place. So you leave it for another 3 months and you do it again. You leave it for another 3 months and you do it again. So every 3 months you've rewritten your story and you get more information coming from that story. You get to see deeper levels of it until right at the very end, you actually get to see all of it. And that's when you carry the Vision Quest. That's when it's all integrated, and that's when it brings about huge changes in your life if you let it.
And I guess, you know, when we look at who you apprenticed from, this practice of quest, is I guess in still some cultures, but it is a rite. It was something that many of us would just do, right? It wasn't a sort of something just for a few folks. It would be part of our
culture.
Yeah,
we don't have that anymore.
You might.
We don't have rites of passage anymore. And of course, what happens is that we don't get adults coming out of it. We get older people, but they're not adults. There's a whole body of psychology that we use, which is the foundation of all the Vision Quest work that we do, and that's called the Teachings of the Shield, which I went through.
Yeah, absolutely.
And basically, what that's saying is that your life goes around the circle, You start in the East, as you're born in the East, you're a child in the South, you're adolescent in the West, and you're an adult in the North. So you have to move around. So you're born, you move into being a child, that's normal. You move in from being a child to being an adolescent, that's normal. But now you have to move from being an adolescent into being an adult. That's not so normal. Because adolescents, by the fact of who they are, they're kicking off all the time. So they need something really strong to move them into being an adulthood, to being an adult. And that was called rites of passage. Many different forms of rites of passage, and the one that we use, the Vision Quest, drops into that slot for the teenager. So traditionally, when a kid reaches that age, they would be separated from their family. Maybe go and do work with the men's group or whatever, and then sent out to do a rite of passage, which has to involve an intimate confrontation with your own personal death. Now, if you were an African tribe and you're a 15-year-old, they separate you from your parents. You go and stay in the men's lodge for a while, and then they send you off to do your rite of passage, which in that case would be, here's your spear, go out and kill a lion and don't come back until you have. Well, I can't think of a more dangerous way of confronting your own death than facing a tiger or a lion or whatever it is. Fortunately, the fasting with us, when we do a Vision Quest, the fasting gives you the impression that you're dying. You're empty, and that's why we do it for 4 days and nights. You have 1 day and night for each of the 4 directions, and by experiencing the qualities of each direction, you embody that. It makes the teachings of the shields become real. It becomes a part of your life, whereas before it's just information.
There are 2 stories on Spaceship Earth, a passenger story and a crew story. The passenger story is based on extraction, transaction and distraction, and it's leading us towards collapse. The crew story is based on connection, cooperation and participation. It leads towards regeneration.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth podcast with my dad, Dan Burgess.
I think that's what's so beautiful, and you know, as I'm listening to you, you know, that for me is still so alive. Those days,
yeah.
You know, and those orientations and those explorations of those life stages. So, you know, just actually as you were talking, it's all coming up for me.
Yeah.
It almost feels like the times we're moving into now, where there's nothing to hold on to. You know, it's like we're seeing all of these structures and systems and stories of modernity that we've kind of been programmed to sort of just say yes to. We're seeing them all coming apart, and we're seeing this, you know, the violence that's in these systems and ways of being.
Yep.
But for many of us in the culture that we're in, we haven't had any of these rites. I mean, what's the rites of passage? Like, you know, go to the pub, or you know, or whatever it is. It's you know, go and there's nothing to kind of guide you, and for you to let go of. To move through these life stages. And then you touched on it slightly about the, you know, the adolescent, but we look into our power systems and you can see, you know, I mean, you can see particularly a lot of men who clearly have never really moved through the adolescent stage.
No, and they don't. That's the thing. Nothing is talked through, nothing is in its right place, because the people are still kids. And I see it, especially now. You know, I turn the TV on, I listen to the politicians, and I see the same thing. Desperate kids trying to do stuff that maybe their intention is good, but there's no substance there, because they're not actually being adults. You know, the thing about children is that they react to everything. An adult acts. There's a big difference. And you just got to look at all the wars that are going on, and they're all going on by kids, because adults don't make wars. Children make wars. War is in the South. It's a place of the child. It's all reaction. Somebody hits you, you kick them back. You know, it's all a reaction. There's no, it's complete nonsense. But that's the state we're in, because we don't have socially sanctioned rites of passage in our culture, and it would be so easy to do. Just get, sixth formers to do it at school. Just reintroduce it to schools as a rite of passage into, their life after school. Easy to do. But the authorities don't want you to do that.
They want you to do maths. They want you to do more
They want
maths.
you to remain ignorant. They don't want people to be conscious.
Yeah.
That's why the whole world is contrived in a way that a few people control everything, because everybody else is out of control, which is what they want. Vision Quest is deeply political, and it's constantly in movement. It's one thing that I've noticed after many years of guiding people through Vision Quest. We can stick to the main stages of the Vision Quest, but as you said, people coming from all different walks of life. So what do we do to help them? We get them to write an autobiography first, so that we can get a sense of who they are. And it's only when we get that sense do I feel confident enough to take somebody through a Vision Quest, because I know that they can deal with it. And we get them to write an autobiography and a letter of intent. Intent changes. You have an intent that brings you there, that makes you turn up. And it can be, I've just been sacked from my job. I need to find new direction in my life. A rite of passage would be good for that. So you turn up to do a rite of passage to see what career move you want to make. But the Vision Quest is a pretty smart process. It knows you've turned up for very different reasons.
Let's just look slightly below that one, shall we?
And it kind of addresses those issues, which you don't even know you've got until you realise it, until somebody points it out to you, and nature points it out to you. Then you begin to see the power of it. And how can 100 different people with 100 different stories, they all come, they get 100 different results, yet all those results are totally pertinent to that person and life-changing for that person. It's magic. It's a form of magic. And over the years, when I first started running Vision Quest, going way back to the early 90s, basically we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just winging it most of the time and seeing what works and what doesn't work and experimenting. And it's through that I began to understand that the Vision Quest is not a normal process. I notice when people come back and they tell their stories are highly choreographed. But I'm not doing the choreography. And they're not doing it, but somebody's doing it. Somebody is choreographing every single step of your Vision Quest. So if it's not me and it's not you, who is it? I don't know, but I know it's somebody. I call it the spirit of the Vision Quest. Now, it might be one spirit, it might be a whole group of spirits. It might be that little guy who turned up in that Earth Lodge many years ago and told me I should be doing this work with my people. In fact, it is. Because when I was hit by a stroke and I was in hospital with a stroke, Jen was there instantly. You know what she said? I met the little man that put you on this path. I said, what? You've got to be kidding. She said, no, he came to me. The little Welshman who told you should be a Vision Quest guide, he came to me. I thought, whoa. This is telling me that, this is real stuff, and it's deep and it's powerful and it's magical and it's way beyond my understanding. After 30 years of putting people through Vision Quest, I still haven't a clue how it works. I don't think I need to know really. But it's a form of magic that we have to engage with. And I'm constantly, when I've got a group out, I'm constantly asking my guides, what needs to be done with these people? What do I need to do with these people? Who's not listening to what we're saying? Who needs extra work? Constantly referring these questions to my spirits and allowing them to answer. That is a skill in itself. It took me 30 years to learn it, and I still haven't.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's interesting because I've been kind of rewilding myself for a good sort of 12, 13 years. I've been sort of really putting myself out into different experiences and gatherings and working with different teachers and, really, really sort of opening myself up to other possibilities, other ways of knowing the world and myself. I think when I did the quest with you, the thing that really shifted with me is maybe before then I'd kind of, I knew in my body and in the energies that I experienced that, I'm receiving through things. I can't maybe talk to people or explain to people what it is or try and convince them, or nor should I have to. But I think coming through the quest now, I feel more confident to speak to these other ways, even though I'm not trying to sort of understand and sort of say tangibly this is how anything works, because I have no idea. But I guess what I'm saying is I feel more confident in the mystery, speaking to the mystery, that actually what I've experienced is by opening myself up to other worlds, to other ways of relating to the world around me. Extraordinary things have come back, and they're still coming back. And I feel that there is this incredible, if you can allow yourself to cross that threshold of not sort of thinking, oh, well, what do you mean the spirit world? And, it's like, what are you talking about? If you allow yourself to step into this other way, and the quest obviously is the perfect way to do that, because you've got no bloody choice when you're out on a mountainside for 4 days and 4 nights with no food.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. So you your rational, logical mind of trying to sort of, because you can allow, I think what I found so much again was when you remove all the distractions of life, like the 3 meals a day, the phone, the watch, all of these things, when you take all of that shit out of the way, you're like, oh my God, I'm really bored. What do I do? And you have to confront all of the uncomfortable stuff.
And there's a lot of it.
And there's a lot of it. It's like, oh my God, there's a lot of it. But you have to start to pay attention to it. Yeah. And that for me is the magic, and that's where the possibility, that's the threshold. And I know that that can't just be, I'm sure, as humans we're all built like that. So therefore for me this work, I think it offers so much to everyone, really, or it could do, and particularly in these times. But that even more so now, this attention, I feel like the need for our attention in these times is so high, to pay attention to what is actually going on in this world, and we're being robbed of that, really, in this kind of modern culture. And what the quest does is it forces you to pay attention.
Yep, it does.
Yeah
It's for many years, from when I first started running Vision Quest, for many years I was under the impression that I run Vision Quests like every other Vision Quest guide. People come to us, we prepare them, we put them out on Vision Quest, we bring them back, we help them navigate this thing. So it was always, this is something that I'm doing. But in the background, I've always known that I had help. I wasn't doing this on my own. And it was only as the years progressed that I began to really look at who's doing the work. Because I'm really pretty much aware of what I do is minimal, and becoming even more so, because I'm now coming to the understanding that we do very little. But we have to kind of prepare people and pass them over to the spirits to do the work. For us being Vision Quest guides, we have to take all that into account and create space for the Vision Quest to actually run itself. We don't run it. We always give people clues, stories, things to do to get you through it. But we're not actually constructing it for you.
Yeah, no, because I felt like, I went out with a sort of a bag of tools and practices and rituals and things that I might create. I mean, it was all my own creation, but you gave us a sense. I felt like I went out onto that for those 4 days and 4 nights with a sort of some some practices, some tricks, some ideas, some things to play with, and the confidence, the encouragement that you gave us to go and follow our hearts more about what we felt, and to try and move into that very spontaneous. For me, it was so, the stuff that happened, it was so emergent. But it was feeling that, I think there's we went out with a kind of whole range of things that we might want to play with, but it was always very, again, just suggestive. It was never it was not a prescriptive process.
They're clues,
right? Yeah.
Clues to keep you going, because the biggest demon for me on every vision quest is boredom.
Yeah.
I get bored very easily, and 4 days and nights is a hell of a long time to get bored.
Yeah.
To stop yourself doing stupid things like wanking every day, whatever, to battle the boredom.
Yeah, and then you got the weather, which is obviously a whole
another ball game.
Oh my god! Yeah.
And it really responds quickly to you as well.
Yeah.
But it's. There's something really magical about working with a process that is alive.
Yes, it's a living process.
It's a living process. And that's what a lot of Vision Quest guides don't get. They think it's a psychological, form of psychotherapy, which it is on many levels, but it's a lot more than that. You have to, if you can take into account that, well, it's difficult for most people that don't believe in spirits. If you don't believe in spirits and you do a Vision Quest, you certainly will believe in them afterwards.
There's something though, I guess, sort of bringing it back to this time and this moment, and there is something that you're speaking to, this living. It's an invitation into a very alive process, journey, adventure, and it's very counter again to the way that our sort of dominant culture wants us to sort of control. It wants sort of certainty and linear, and you need to be able to sort of understand everything rationally, and it's so counter that.
Yep.
As life is, but there is something again in these times that the invitation to sort of open up to step into a living experience like the Vision Quest just feels so vital. So we could talk for hours. I'm just thinking, what's the plan this year if folks are interested, and because I know you often move around different parts of the country where you put these quests on, and how are things unfolding for this year?
Basically, for the past 10 odd years, I've been using Johnny's land, Lord Scudamore. He's got 7,000 acres, so it's a lot of land. So it's great work in there. At the end of May, we're going to do our own personal vision quests up in the Deer Park. Then after that, we're scheduling one vision quest in July, which I will be running. Don't know who with yet. And then we're going to schedule another 2 in the year. So we'll schedule 3 vision quests. One Jen is going to help me put together, although she's been most of the time in Scotland. And the other 2 vision quests, I'll just let them unravel the way they will. So the dates are going to go up on the website.
And I'll link to that. And it strikes me, because you've trained up a lot of guides, right, in your time. You've trained up a lot of guides to go on and hold quests. And, but it feels like in these times there's this kind of thing of like access to land to do these quests and availability of guides. And it sort of feels, again, in my where my head goes in this time, it feels like, gosh, we need more access to land and more guides who are able to run these kind of experiences, because if there's more and more people, seeking, how to build their understanding and courage and resilience for these times. And I think the quest feels like such a powerful medicine, but it's not easy, right? It's getting access to land.
And that, you can only take people where they want to go. I'm just hoping that the spirits of the Vision Quest keep talking to me, telling me what I should be doing, because I don't know most of the time. As Jen and I say, we've perfected the art of winging it, and that involves trust. Trust the ceremony, and so long as you trust the ceremony, everybody gets what they need to get. And that is the thing. The Vision Quest will always give you what you need, but that's not necessarily what you want, what you're looking for. But, it's what you need. And sometimes, people really don't like what they need. But that's what brings you into balance. That's why you never know what you have to face with. And some people will not engage with the Vision Quest simply because they're scared of what they might see.
Yeah.
And what you see, of course, is your shadow.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole mirroring, isn't it, that's going on? And you're effectively, you're creating the conditions as much as you can for this work to happen through people. Yeah.
It is. The whole thing is a friggin' enigma, I mean, as I said, Jen and I have been doing this for years, and we are still blown away by how it works with people, how it unfolds in their lives, how it keeps nudging them to move forward. That's why I start off every group by saying I'm not a guru, I'm not a shaman, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a mystic, I'm not a wizard or none of those things. We're just normal people, and we're learning.
That's debatable, David, in my opinion, but yes. No, but I think that I think the real quality is this humility, and there's care and attention that you can bring to a process like this, and then there's humility, like you say, to just to recognize that there's something else that's going on that's beyond us. You're getting older. You've been doing this for 3 decades. You've seen the world change dramatically, and where we find ourselves today. What's your hopes for this work and how it might continue, particularly in these landscapes, in this where we find ourselves?
Well, there are enough Vision Quest guides in this country now who can really move this along. I mean, I can see that in the changes that we are going to have to go through in the next 20 odd years is going to be really difficult, and Vision Quest is going to be incredibly important to get people on the right path. How can you be of service to your people? And that's the reason you do a Vision Quest. Nobody does a Vision Quest just for themselves. You do it for your people. So the number one question you ask yourself is, when you get back from your Vision Quest, is how can I give this away? After you've gone through the year of integrating it, of course. Then at the end of that year, once you've embodied it and it becomes a part of who you are, then you can share it without the danger of losing any of it.
Yeah, exactly. This is about how, particularly that the shield work as we move to the north, towards the elder, towards the adult, right? Which is very much about who. It's not just what do I want. It's like what am I being called to serve?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's that very much that shift again, which clashes very much with the modern culture, which is the individual, the what's in it for me, what am I here to do for me, whereas this is a sort of a slightly different kind of shift of what connecting with what is most alive for me, and then how do I bring that into service for my community. And
I've been thinking, for quite a long time now, how am I going to progress this? How am I going to move this forward? What's the big question that I have? And that's the reason I'm doing the Vision Quest in May. I'm going up into the mountain, and the question is, how can I really serve my people now that I'm a pensioner? How can I really serve my people now that we're going through all kinds of fucking hell, which is what we're going to go through, unfortunately. So I'm going off to do my Vision Quest with the question, how can I be of service to my people now that I've done all this work? Do I continue running Vision Quests? Do I start teaching people how to run Vision Quests? Or am I going to write a book? Or am I going to do something different? I don't know.
All of it. All of that.
All of that, yeah. Yeah, that's another way of looking at the Vision Quest. You go back to the source.
No, it's beautiful. So listen, a couple of things I'd love to ask you just to sort of come to the close of the conversation. It's something I ask all guests. So the first one is like we explore this story of, in this podcast, this idea of like passengers versus crew on this spaceship Earth, right? So the passenger story, which is really this dominant culture of passivity and extraction and transaction and distraction, as we call it, and or this crew story of stepping into this idea of connection and cooperating and participating in this bringing life back into our world as everything's unraveling. So we speak to this frame, becoming crew. What comes up for you, David, with this idea of becoming crew in these times?
And that changes from moment to moment. So I make a point of not being attached to any results. And that's one thing you really learn about Vision Quest. You have to be. I have a motto. It's called infinite flexibility. Because all things can happen. You know, I might decide, I'm going to continue doing the Vision Quest work, and then, you know, next week some idiot blows up a fucking nuclear bomb and we're up shit creek again. Everything is so fluid. So the Vision Quest has to be fluid. And I'm going to go out there and sit there and ask all my guides, what do I do next? What's the next step for me? And see where that takes us. Because there are a lot of possibilities. There are a lot of things I could do. I've trained lots of people in the past, and people like Martin Shaw just taken it off into the stratosphere. I mean, he's done remarkable things. And many, many other people that are running Vision Quest that I don't know and haven't met yet. But I've heard about them, and they're all doing good work too. It needs to happen more. People need to wake up. And not necessarily, as well as waking up to everything that's going on around them, they have to wake up to who they are. And, you know, where their joy is. As, you know, Joseph Campbell used to say, always follow your bliss, which I think is a good one to stick to. And also, you know, find out who your tribe is. Who are the people that you're going to gravitate around? Who are the people that are going to gravitate around you when you start doing good work? So if you start running Vision Quest or whatever group, or whatever work you decide to do, who are the people that you're drawing in, you know, and how are you serving them, and how are they going to move this on? Everything is connected, so you have to be aware of that. So yeah,
beautiful. And we, I guess, in the spirit of becoming crew, the spirit of participation, is there something you might leave our listeners? It could be a practice, it could be a provocation, it could be something that they could just start to consider as they sort of step into this, you know, and start to see the world. Maybe is it just something that can help them start to shift, maybe
embrace change. You know, that's the one thing that most people are absolutely terrified of, is change. That's why you get people who do jobs they absolutely hate, but they won't quit, because change is terrifying. If you can embrace all the changes that we're going to have to go through and become a shining light in that, then you can guide other people through the same changes. And changes are coming fast and furious now. Who knows? In 6 months' time, we might have aliens landing in our back garden. We don't know. Could be. But all the changes are being compressed into. Everything is changing. The whole system is, the whole planetary system is changing. So we've got to engage with that. If we don't, we'll get run over, be hit by a steam train or whatever.
Yeah, we've got to become comfortable with change, right? Very fast.
Yeah, and the only way
curious with it, I guess.
Yeah, well, the only way to do that is to engage with it. And the only way to do that, really engage with it, is that's what Vision Quests were designed for. Although they weren't called Vision Quest, every country has had its own way of doing it. It's to embrace the changes. And the only way to do that is to connect with the core of who you are and reality. And it's a different ball game altogether, because we're far from that.
Thank you, David. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for
welcome,
taking this time.
You guys are just blundering around here.
You're
welcome to.
Yeah, it's fantastic to sit and listen. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
So, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with David. What a fascinating life he has led. If you're curious about the Vision Quests, do reach out to David and Jen. I've put the contacts in the show notes. And as I said at the start, if you're interested in getting onto some land for a weekend, taking part in a guided overnight wilderness solo, then we are offering our first Becoming Crew on land experiences in September. And the overnight wilderness solo will be the first thing we do. So drop us a line, hello@becomingcrew.com, and we will be in touch with more details. On the Becoming Crew, I have to give a quick plug to our 6-month flagship unlearning course. It's second year, the Remix. This is happening online, but it has land-based elements that we guide you through in the places that you call home. It really is an invitation for those of you that really want to step into these times to really look at this story of separation in our culture and play a part in the composting of that story that's causing so much destruction in our cultures and society. So this is a chance to join a crew on a deep transformational learning journey where we're really looking at how do we grow connection to self, to each other, and to the living earth in these times. How do we grow courage to step in fully into these times and to offer our gifts and energies to bringing on new ways of being? And how do we grow creativity? That's our own creativity, and that's not, necessarily how do we grow our ability to do art or whatever. It's like, how do we connect into this creative intelligence that we all have in us, this creative energy? How do we draw on that and learn to channel that into the missions and the expressions that we want to bring into this world in these times? So it's a held, guided journey. We've got some extraordinary guest teachers, guest workshops, some beautiful guides to hold you through. We've got all kinds of tools and practices for you to take on into your lives. We've got weekly check-in sessions, not compulsory, but they're there for you to build your practice. It's really about helping people build the practice to make the changes that we're longing for now in these times, that we're dreaming for. So full details in the links in the show notes, but go to becomingcrew.com and you'll find the Remix 2024. You can register your interest, reach out, book a call with one of us for more details, but people starting to book in, and we're really excited about that. So yes, just to say thank you for tuning in. I hope you've got something out of this episode. Please do share it with a friend if it speaks to you and you think it might speak to someone you know. Please give us a shout out on social media. We're an ad-free podcast. This is our 6th year. We like many people are really struggling with the economics these days of doing anything. So the more folks that find out about us, the more that supports the mission. So you talking about an episode, sharing it, sticking it in a WhatsApp group, posting it online is super, super helpful. Likewise, if it's bringing up something for you, a question, a thought, just get into the comments on the Substack. It's super simple, and just leave some thoughts, start a conversation. It matters that we begin to talk about these things, that we create energy around different types of stories that aren't sitting in the kind of binary, divisive mainstream story culture. So yeah, we need you as part of the crew on this mission. So with that, please do look after yourself. Make sure you keep getting out onto the spaceship Earth around where you are. And until next time, peace and out.
This podcast is created in service to life, for you. It takes time, funds and energy to make. If you'd like to contribute to the running costs, you can donate the price of a cuppa or a pint. Find the link on our website. This podcast wouldn't exist without the following crew: Charlie Shred, Audio Jedi; Seaman Home Burgess, Engine Room; Willow Burgess, Jingles;